Hello there, everybody. And today, I'm finally here to end my 2023 movie reviews with Spider Man Across the Spider Verse. This came out June 2nd last year. And I gotta say, this is easily my favorite movie of 2023. Not just because I love Spider Man, but because the whole Spider Man lore, the animation, there was just so much to like about this movie. Let's get into it. So I reviewed this movie with the Hedgehog Nerd a couple months back. Check out that review. We go on a long, review with it. But I'm here to give my individual thoughts on the movie. But might as well give my thoughts on the first Spider-Verse movie. I do really like that movie. It's really well animated. The voice cast is really good, and I liked the various Spider men, women, people in that movie, like Spider Gwen, Spider Man Noir. And at the end of that movie, they did tease the 2099 Spider Man, and we finally do see him in this movie. But the movie opens with Gwen Stacy, as we see her as Spider Gwen, Ghost Spider, whatever you want to call her, and we're kind of learning about her origin. Like, we see that she was bitten by the spider. We see her get along with Peter Parker, her family, but it's always felt the same for her throughout her life. It's just a daily routine, but they still don't know that she's Spider Gwen. But we do learn, it pays homage to the comic, where what led down Spider Gwen's path against her father, and it creates a unique tension because she accidentally killed that world's Peter Parker, since he turned himself into the Lizard, and I guess Spider Gwen's battle with him caused him to die, and now Gwen's father thinks Gwen is behind what happened, and it's creating tension between her and her father, as she wants to tell him about who she is, but she just knows he's not gonna have it, since he's still hunting for Spider Gwen. But things do take a turn when it appears that a vulture from another dimension has invaded I think a bank, I'm pretty sure, and Spider Gwen shows up, and she even webs her dad so the police doesn't get in the way, and they get into a fight, and that's where the 2099 Spider-Man shows up, and yeah, we get some cool references, the other Spider-Verse stuff, and we do get a homage to a Spider-Man in No Way Home, where I do like when 2099 Spider-Man's he's saying oh, we gotta stop, it's not as bad as that little nerd in Doctor Strange, and he says Earth 199999, and for some reason MCU likes to say it's Earth 616, and this movie it's saying it's Earth 19999, but honestly that's how I viewed it, it's Earth 19999. It's a weird nitpick, but it's cool that No Way Home is referenced in this movie. I do like Gwen's line where she asks about Doctor Strange, but they do fight this vulture creature, and I think they managed to take him down, but that's where Gwen does bump into her dad, and he actually scares Gwen with a warning gunshot, and Gwen is forced to reveal her identity to her dad. But I do like where Gwen says can you not be a cop and just be my dad? And it's such a sad scene, but the dad still wants to arrest Gwen, and Gwen decides she has a choice to stay with her dad or go with the 2099 Spider-Man and join his Spider Society. And that's what Gwen does. She joins the Spider Society as her dad is left behind. And our movie opens with Miles Morales, Spider-Man, and what he's been up to for a bit. He grew, and he's been missing his Spider-Verse days, and he's even drawing Gwen in his sketch pad. And he's just getting along just fine as Spider-Man, still dealing with some hardships as Spider-Man. But things take a turn when his parents are at some school meeting with his teacher, and while that's all going on, Miles is busy fighting his new enemy at the store, some grocery store, the bank, I'm pretty sure. He fights the Spot. So the Spot is the main villain of this movie. I gotta say, the Spot I thought he wasn't really a big threat. Like, he's set up to be this big threat villain, but it turns out once he starts learning of his abilities, he becomes a bigger threat, which will be set up in the next movie. But Miles does get into a fight with the Spot. It's pretty entertaining. It's funny. And I do like how the Spot is, like, introducing himself. And Miles is just not taking him seriously. But even though, like, there's bread that comes out through his holes, literally. And while that's all going on, Miles does get ready for his interview. And he does meet up with his mom and his dad. And they're kind of, I don't know, just a little disappointed with him because of his grades. But Miles decides that he must go back to the fight. And that's where his dad shows up because he's the cop, and they get into this big fight with the Spot where they're at some construction yard, and they do fall into the holes of the Spot, and it's a very cool scene. But the dad decides not to jump in the hole, and then he just goes down the stairs. I probably would have done the same if I were in his shoes. But I think the Spot gets away, and he was going to reveal his backstory, but we won't get to that until later. And Miles, Spider-Man, and Jefferson do have a little talk where Jefferson talks about how he loves his son, but he feels he screws up a lot. And I do like the line where Miles is like, maybe get off the kid's ass. So yeah, this movie has a lot of swearing, surprisingly. I was talking about that in Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, where like some of these animated movies are kind of getting away with swearing. And this movie has a few swear words just slipped in there, which was cool, I guess. But Miles is going well as Spider-Man. Like, he's trying to balance his life a little, but it's some things are just not working out. I don't know why I said it was working out. I don't know. I'm confusing my words, but things take a turn for pretty worse once the Spot does discover his powers. But we do get a bunch of cool cameos in this movie, because if it's not Spider-Verse, we're obviously going to see some cool cameos. So the Spot ends up going into the Venom universe, where he meets that lady from the convenience store where Eddie goes to. He also, get this, he goes to the Lego universe of Spider-Man, and apparently they hired a YouTuber to film this scene, and that is a huge opportunity. Congratulations to that YouTuber. He did a fantastic job with the Lego, and it looks so cool. And apparently Lego Spider-Man's part of the Spider Society, and this is the same one from the video game universe of Spider-Man, which is cool. But things take a turn when Miles is getting ready for his family's party, who are honoring his dad for becoming promoted to a police captain, and Miles is trying to get the cake for it, but the dad and his mom are all worried where Miles is, but Jefferson makes a toast and mentions Uncle Aaron, Miles' uncle. And yeah, it was a nice toast, but when Miles shows up, it leads to them having a conflict, a fight, and Miles is just upset because he feels he's a man now and he wants to do his own thing, but his parents are just like, no. But Miles ends up storming off, and because he was late and he ended up messing up the cake, it literally even says, "I'm not proud of you." Miles ends up getting sent to his room, but Miles is kind of just like bummed out by this whole thing. But he is interrupted by Spider-Gwen, who has shown up to visit Miles, but not what you think. It's where Spider-Gwen has a talk with Miles about, and I do like the scene where she finds his drawings, and she's like, "Oh, there's so many," and she says, "I missed you too," and then the two have a talk, and I do escape their house, and then I do like where Gwen's like, is Spider-Man grounded? But they do have a talk on the building, the Empire State Building, I'm pretty sure. But that scene actually looked really cool. The animation of the city itself, it looks really well done. Cause like I'm gonna keep praising the animation in this movie because it is some of the top tier animation. It honestly did deserve an Oscar. I think it got nominated, but Gwen does have a talk with Miles about the Gwen Stacy in other universes where things don't turn out with her, and it shows their connection between each other. But it turns out Gwen can't stay long, as she was not here for Miles. She was actually here to investigate the Spot, as he is creating like something to get his revenge on Miles. But Gwen, I think later when Miles does go back to the house, he does have a little talk with his mom. And they somewhat make things right. But they do end up meeting Gwen. I'm kind of jumping a bit, but like they have a nice talk with Gwen. They're like, were even asking Miles if he has any friends. But he tried to name them from Spider-Verse, but he just says they moved out. But I think once Miles and his mom have that little talk, he does tell Miles to go meet with Gwen. But Miles is like, seriously? But then he zips in his costume. That's the last time he has a scene with his parents, foreshadowing later. So Miles, Spider-Man, ends up meeting up with Gwen, but he goes invisible as he finds out Gwen was not here for Miles, and apparently she was getting a call from Spider-Woman, who's also in this movie, by the way. I forgot to mention she was in the opening scene. But she says how, like, oh, you shouldn't have been visiting him. We're here for the mission. But yeah, Gwen really did want to visit Miles, and she did it anyway. But she ends up saying goodbye to Miles, since this is probably gonna be. She probably thinks this is gonna be the last time she ever sees Miles. But Miles literally takes off his invisibility, and he ends up going into the portal, and he follows Gwen, and they end up in the world of Spider-Man of India, and we get like if Spider-Man was Indian, I'm pretty sure, and we do learn that one's backstory, and that one was cool. He was voiced by the guy who plays the taxi driver in Deadpool, which was cool. He was a good Spider-Man, but it turns out something is creating a tangent in this world, and it will be relevant later as the world of India is collapsing in this world of Spider-Man, and so Gwen and the Spider-Man of India team up and then Miles Spider-Man shows up, and they're like, hey, you shouldn't be here. But things are taking a turn as a giant wormhole is opening, and they're trying to chase the Spot. But I think he ends up getting away, and they have to save the remaining people there. But they also get help from, I think, Spider-Punk. He's also in this movie, and he was super cool looking. I always liked the Spider-Punk. He's like basically a rock star version of Spider-Man. And they end up saving most of the people there, but it's going to be foreshadowing later. As the reason why Miles ain't supposed to be here is because apparently the spider bitten was actually from another dimension, and it bit Spider-Man, and it also caused a lab accident for the Spot, and it gave him his holes, his powers, and that's the reason why the Spot exists. So it makes sense that Miles and the Spot are enemies now in this movie, and I hope the sequel does explore their arch nemesis ways. But they saved the days of India, but there's still damage done, as there's a giant hole from the bridge that they tried to save people from. But it turns out Miles has to go all the way back to the Spider Society. But they end up going there, and it's the Orsha, New York, like the world where Spider-Man 2099 lives. And they don't give him a bracelet to help keep his from multiverse snap. I don't know if you've seen the first one, but like apparently you have to wear a bracelet to enter the multiverse. But once they go to the Spider Society, we get a bunch of cool cameos. We get Spider-Man Unlimited. We get PS4 Insomniac Spider-Man. We also get, I'll get to this later, but we also get the Prowler, for MCU Prowler, and it's played by Donald Glover, I'm pretty sure, and his cameo is pretty cool, and it's cool that Miles has that interaction with the Prowler in the MCU, even though we haven't seen Miles Morales Spider-Man yet in the MCU. I have a feeling we will. But once they get to the Spider Society to meet up with 2099 Spider-Man, we also get the return of Peter B. Parker. And now I really love Peter B. Parker because now he is finally happy as Spider-Man. It's kind of a big bash at like the current run of the Spider-Man comics where Spider-Man and MJ are still not a couple and they're not happy. But in this universe, Peter B. Parker has finally remarried MJ and they gave a birth to a daughter. And it's very adorable. Mayday Parker, I'm pretty sure her name is. And her dynamic with Peter B. Parker is just adorable, lovely. And some people don't like Peter B. Parker and Mayday together since he's carrying around her daughter. And I don't get it, because why are you people mad because Peter B. Parker is happy? It just doesn't make sense. I guess they just don't like him carrying around his daughter. But anyway, 2099 Spider-Man shows up, and he is very serious about this whole Spider-Verse thing. And Miles even calls it Spider-Verse, and he's like, that's kind of a stupid name. And he actually says what it's actually called, and he actually explains this whole thing, which is a major plot point of this movie, where he explains that the whole Spider canon is a thing, where certain events are supposed to happen. The death of, they name an example, the death of Uncle Ben, the death of George Stacy, and we get a bunch of resemblance of it, and Miles ends up seeing the death of Uncle Aaron, and we also get some cool cameos of Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, Tobey Spider-Man, and even, get this, we get the return of the spectacular Spider-Man from the TV show. I was so happy when he was on the poster for this movie, and apparently he's part of the Spider Society. And it makes me wonder why he's part of the Spider Society, and we'll get to this in a bit, but seeing that spectacular Spider-Man was amazing. It was childhood, even though I didn't watch the show until I saw it on Netflix, because the show was super hard to find, but that's a different story. But it turns out the canon events are supposed to happen when the Spider-Person's father figure, it becomes the police captain. They end up having to die, and Miles learns that his dad is going to die because he becomes the captain of police force. And so, and it turns out Miles does not want this to happen to his dad, as he learns that the only way they can keep the canon together and not the universe from falling apart is if they let his dad die to keep the canon running. Because it turns out 2099 Spider-Man actually tried to come into the way of when he saw another counterpart of himself die, and he took his place. But it turns out it caused a rift in the whole canon. And so Miles knows this is all really messed up stuff, but two sides are not wrong if you really think about it, because Miles Spider-Man actually wants to save his dad because he's Spider-Man, and that's the one core aspect of this movie that really worked. He really respects what makes Spider-Man Spider-Man. He loves his loved ones, and he knows there will be consequences even if he has to save them, protect them, if they die or they don't die. But at the end of the day, they're still the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, But 2099 Spider-Man just wants to let him die because he doesn't want the canon to break. So both sides are not wrong. But Miles wants to save his dad. But they tried to end up locking away Miles, but he ends up escaping. And it leads to this big chase. And this scene took hours for the film, and it leads to a big chase, and Miles ends up going on some giant elevator. And they even do like the point thing, the Spider-Man meme, which is funny. But Spider-Man ends up going on the elevator with all the other Spider people, and he does have a little talk with Peter B. Parker, and Peter B. Parker actually reveals that he is the reason why he got the guts to go to MJ and refix his life. So that's inspiration right there. But once they get to this tower, Miguel ends up attacking Miles, and he ends up being super harsh towards Miles, telling him that he's not Spider-Man, saying he was never meant to be bitten, and he says he doesn't belong here. And then apparently Gwen and Peter tell him, Miguel, like, hey, don't be so hard, we talked about this. And then Miles is like, you talked about this? And yeah, so it creates tension between their friendship, since Miles feels like he can't even trust Gwen anymore, since they don't even trust him to go out and save his dad. But he ends up saying, I'm Miles Morales. I was bitten by a spider. I became Spider-Man. He ends up zapping 2099 Spider-Man. And then Spider-Man ends up escaping with a bunch of other Spider-Mans following along on the elevator. But Miguel goes out of his way to go after Miles. Miles ends up sneaking on board to the teleporter, and he ends up escaping, and Miguel nearly got him. But Miguel is furious, and he ends up lashing out at Gwen, and Peter's like, whoa. And he ends up kicking her out of the team since he lost her trust, and now Miguel goes after Miles. But it turns out the biggest plot twist of this movie is when it's revealed Miles thought he was back at his Earth. He even runs to his mother, and he ends up having a little talk with her, saying that he loves her, saying like, oh, we were there for each other or something. But he ends up taking off his uniform and revealing that he's Spider-Man. But it turns out his mom's like, who's Spider-Man? And it turns out his Uncle Aaron is back. And it turns out the biggest twist of this movie is Miles is actually not back at his Earth. He went to the wrong Earth. As even Gwen went back to his Earth and snuck into Miles's room. And Miles's parents are worried sick. But they end up finding Gwen, and they find out that Miles ran away. And they're wondering where he is, and they end up yelling at her. And it turns out Miles is in another Earth where his dad did die, but his uncle lived. And this world's Miles is actually the Prowler. And the movie ends with the cliffhanger of to be continued. And once I saw this in the theater, I just realized there's a part 2 to this movie. And the movie ends with that. And it ends with a beautiful song, Am I Dreaming? And that's Spider-Verse. So this was truly an amazing movie. Amazing animation. But check out my review of The Hedgehog Nerd. We go in a lot more depth with this movie since he's a big Spider-Man fan. But I really love this movie. 10 out of 10. Great voice acting. And great story. Great respect towards Spider-Man. Awesome cameos. I don't think there's much more to say. And I'm super excited for the sequel of this movie, Beyond the Spider-Verse. As Miles, Gwen, who has teamed up with all the teammates from the last movie to help take down the Spot. And possibly 2099 Spider-Man? I don't know. I don't know if it's debatable if he's a villain or not in this movie. But, I'm super excited. So, I don't know what the next review I'm going to do. I'm probably going to do the Deadpool movies. Since Deadpool and Wolverine came out, I'm a little late on the reviews. But, It took me a while to do these 2023 movie reviews. I had a great time with these movies. Yeah, 2023 was a weird year for movies, but it was also a good year. I think we got some decent movies, and I look forward to review the 2024 movies. But I think nothing else to say, but thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.